Estate planning is a crucial consideration for most Canadians today, and a lot of people aren't doing it. Let's talk about that. Make Better Wealth Decisions, a podcast that explores how financial advisors' blind spots can harm your investments. I'm your host, John DeGuy, a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. In this podcast, we'll provide advice on how you can achieve better outcomes by maximizing investments and minimizing taxes. Let's put our thinking caps on as we consciously decide to get smarter about our money. This past week, we talked with Barb Amsden, and she's just written a book, Laughing at Death and Taxes. And it's important, I thought, to take a moment to deconstruct some of the things that came out in that conversation and to add some color and some detail, because a lot of people think that making better wealth decisions is all about investing and making money. But in fact, there's a crucial element of estate planning that is often overlooked by many Canadians. Virtually every Canadian needs a will. Virtually every Canadian needs a power of attorney. So the first bit of advice I would have is please don't cheap out. Don't let the fact that it might cost you a few $100s to get an up-to-date and current and accurate will and a couple of powers of attorney in place stop you from doing it. For those who aren't familiar with the phrase of power of attorney, about 25 years ago, the Substitute Decisions Act was enacted in Ontario. That really forced people to have someone to act as their attorney, their representative, if for whatever reason they were physically or mentally incapacitated. Powers of attorney take two shapes. One is for property, that's basically your home and your investments, and the other is for personal care, which is to say, if you're, for instance, in a coma and unable to act on your behalf and unable to give instructions to your physician, then you will deputize someone to act as your behalf. And that can include any number of things, including, sadly, whether or not to pull the plug on a life support system. So it's crucial that you have someone in your place to make that decision. Similarly, if you don't have a will in place, you still have an estate plan. The problem is the estate plan will be administered by the government, and the government will do things that you almost certainly would not have done had you taken the time and spent the money to actually codify what it is that you actually wanted to happen with your estate. So it's crucial that you do that. The other thing that I would mention is that you should be updating your will regularly, certainly whenever there's a life change, something like a divorce. Those are the sorts of things that you absolutely need to update your will, because you could unintentionally disinherit children if you then remarry and don't update your will, and you're not specific with regard to having things go to your spouse. Now you've got a new spouse, and if you have all your assets go to your second spouse, then your children from the first marriage might be inadvertently disinherited if you don't update your will. So you have to make sure that you're paying attention. Another thing that I will mention is that probate is no big deal. I hear a lot of people talking about how they're putting things, assets into joint name in order to minimize probate fees. Probate is really the least of your concerns. It's about 1.5% of your estate's assets. And oftentimes, a number of things that you own don't even form part of your estate when you pass. And so it is really a very nominal thing. You should not let the probate tail wag the estate planning dog. That's the sort of thing that I think has caused more undue harm than people would care to admit. The other thing that I will say is that wills are important no matter what your stage in life. If you're young, and especially if you have children, it's really critical that you name a guardian for your young children in case you and your spouse both die, perhaps, for instance, in a car crash or something like that. We just had a situation earlier last week where Johnny Gaudreau, a world-class hockey player, 31 years old, was killed. He was riding a bike with his brother, and he was killed by a drunk driver. And now here's a guy who's young with a spouse and two children. I hope he had a will, and I hope he named guardian. Well, in this case, his wife will remain the guardian for the children. But in case if there are situations where there's a plane crash or a car crash where both the husband and the wife die, it's crucial, absolutely vital, that you name someone to take over to provide for your children in your absence. Similarly, later in life, you might have a large estate, and you might want to give some consideration to charities. Naming those charities, helping your executor or executrix find those charities would be useful. You might want to consider giving things away before you die so you can get some tax deductions. If the charities are getting it anyway, you may as well get the tax deduction and see those people enjoy the fruits of your largesse while you're still alive. You can even set up things like donor advised funds where you can put the money into a separate account, get a tax deduction now, and then offer regular direction as to how to give dribs and drabs from the one-time donation to various charities for the remainder of your life. There are a lot of things that you can do with regard to estate planning. I'm only scratching the surface. As always, please consult a professional with regard to it, but it's vital. Do your estate planning. Do not put this off. It's the sort of thing that too many people feel morbid about and they don't want to confront their own mortality. That's not a wise thing to do. Do your estate planning now, please.
John DeGuy is a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. The views expressed in this programme are not to be construed as specific advice. It is recommended that you consult a qualified advisor before taking action. His books, The Professional Financial Advisor 4, Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry and Bullshift are available through Amazon and in bookstores throughout Canada. You can reach John at 647-STAND-UP. That's 647-782-6387 or at jdeguy@designedsecurities.ca.